have Steppin with Marcus J. Thank you everybody for staying with us. We are back into our next segment here. Anybody want to be down with us? Call us up at 804-402-2893 to be down with the flagship show right here on Legacy Internet Radio. And as promised, I got a very, very, very special guest on the live line, and we're going to talk some history here tonight. And so without any further ado, I want to introduce to some and reintroduce to many. My mama, Moms J, is on us on the live line. What's up, Ma?
Hey, well, good evening, my friends.
Hello, how are you?
You got SY, you got Miss Brandy, and you got comedian S. Lissa P, who hosts our Wednesday night show, The Green Room version 2.0 with Jay Grizzy and Lissa P every Wednesday from 7 to 9. They are the ladies that joining us.
To you all.
Yes. Well, you be listening to The Green Room?
Yeah, Mama Johnson know what's going on. Welcome, Aint.
If you listening to The Green Room, you're going to hear some stuff on that show. All right. Well, let's do this. What I wanted to do is I wanted to share with the crew and the listeners conversations that you and I have been having since I was a young fella, and have folks kind of get an idea of where I get my social consciousness from. This coming Friday marks the 50th anniversary of the assassination of what I believe was our 35th president, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who was shot in Dallas, Texas, on November 22nd, 1963. So let's start there. On November 22nd, 1963, at approximately 1:30 Central Time, which would have been 12:30 in Jersey City. Do you remember where you were?
Like everybody else, I know exactly where I was and exactly what I was doing at that particular moment. I was on my very first job, having graduated from high school in June. I was on my very first job in New York City in an insurance company on 52nd Street, right by Radio City Music Hall. Just come back from lunch, walked into the room. Everybody's face was like very, very strange, and it just came out. They told us what had happened, and in the next 15 minutes, they had dismissed the office. And the next thing I knew, I was on my way home. Now, I was standing on the subway station, just trying to process, what was going on. As I looked around, people were weeping and leaning against the posts, and just in utter disbelief. It was like walking among zombies.
Now, kind of talk to us a little bit about the climate of our country at that time. If I'm remembering history correctly, the March on Washington was just a couple of months before that.
Yeah, the March on Washington was in August, which I had the privilege of attending. The March on Washington. 1963 was a very, very weird year. Personally, I had it was ups and downs. Like 1 week to the day before I graduated on June 19th, Medgar Evers was shot down down in Mississippi. We were trying to process that. We're happy. We're getting ready to graduate, but we knew that this terrible thing had happened down in Mississippi. Fortunately for us, we were in the north. Okay, it didn't. These things didn't affect us as personally as it did the people down south. When I say these things, I'm talking about the Jim Crow and how the white people, if I can say, weren't treating us correctly down there. It wasn't as overt.
You said it a lot more politically correct than I would. And especially when you.
These things weren't as overt, so we're going along with our lives, but still very mindful of what's going on down south. And it was rough. It was a terrible time. It was a terrible time all through the '60s. There was just so much going on. With the assassinations and
Can you speak to what Black America felt at the time about John and Bobby, and how we felt about them, and our reaction? I should say our or yours, and I don't know if you knew, but I guess you didn't know.
I guess Black people in general, we were happy with the Kennedys. I was personally, infatuated with Mrs. Kennedy, Jackie Kennedy. I would, try to had on my little pillowbox hat and my A-line dresses and such. We were fascinated with the style of the Kennedys. I mean, they were just like a breath of fresh air.
Right. Now, when you consider the assassination, obviously the same year as Medgar Evers, and it just, I guess about a year later, you had the civil rights workers that were murdered. Cheney and Goodwin and Schwerner.
Schwerner and
Cheney and those guys down in Philadelphia, I believe, Mississippi.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff was happening. I mean, I don't even know how to phrase the question, but when you consider prior to June of 1963 when Medgar was killed, and then you kind of move through the rest of the decade. We lost Malcolm in February of 65, and King we lost in April of 68, and then Bobby Kennedy just 6 weeks later. I mean, what the heck was this turmoil like?
Well, that's a good word. It was turmoil. Again, we were just watching. From my perspective, from where I was living, we're just watching all of these terrible things happen. You were feeling it. It was painful, but fairly hopeless about it.
As far as the Kennedy assassination and the immediate after, well, first of all, let me back up. You wouldn't have been old enough to vote for him at the time, I'm guessing.
No.
Okay.
No, I was not able to vote for him.
Okay, all right, but you were able to vote for Johnson, who...
Johnson, right.
Okay.
In 65, I was able to vote in 64, so I wasn't able to vote. Certainly would have if I had been able to.
Right. Did we continue our support? I mean, I know we, with Johnson with the Civil Rights Bill and the Voters Bill and all that kind of stuff, did we continue our support in our community for Johnson as we had for Kennedy? Was it the same kind of energy, or did it kind of wane?
It was like a coming together. We had the helpless feeling, when we lost President Kennedy, but we knew we had to stand up. The country has got to stay together. So in order to do that, we had to be behind Lyndon Johnson, and then Lyndon Johnson came through.
Right.
And Lyndon Johnson did come through.
Yeah, he got frustrated. That's why he just...
Events of the times forced Lyndon Johnson to get behind the civil rights movement and get behind Martin King, and we passed that legislation, the voting rights, and so he stepped up. I mean, he had to go away because of the war. We understand why Lyndon Johnson stepped aside.
Yeah, he chose not to run for re-election after he ran that first time. Yeah,
but that was I won't say because he wasn't performing well as the president, but it was the times, the war, what was going on.
Right.
He had to step aside. Right.
Now, as far as the impact of the 60s and then, moving on through the 70s and into present times, what do you think, in your opinion, as someone who lived through all of those times, has been the biggest difference between you and your youth? And if you wasn't able to vote in 63, so I guess you were about 16 or so when he was killed, versus the youth, I guess, of my generation. What, in your opinion, you see as kind of the biggest difference between your generation and mine?
Biggest difference between your generation and my generation? Well, we were a happy-go-lucky bunch of people. We were basically happy. We weren't afraid of things. We enjoyed ourselves. We didn't have this impending doom that the later generation seemed to have.
You also listen to your mother and your father.
Absolutely.
Whereas a lot of these kids today don't do that, and it's funny because when I'm out and about and I see stuff going on, I'm channeling your husband, my father, and it kind of freaks me out a little bit. When you think of the martyrs, because that's what they became, of the
Kennedy and Johnson. Kennedy and Martin King. Yeah.
Have you seen anybody in the 50 years since we lost Kennedy that would lead you to believe that we would be okay going forward, whether they've come and gone or on the landscape currently?
You mean as strong a personality as was Martin Luther King and the Kennedys? Strong
personality, leadership, power to lead, anything like that.
I don't, I personally didn't look up to.
Well, let me ask you. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I asked that question. Let me tell you why I asked that question, because we've got a black president now, and we know that he had 97% of the black vote both times he was elected. And we've debated on on this show as well as in personal conversations the merits of actually monolithically dictating our vote that way. But black guy, we kind of understand it. But then you also have people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson who have risen out of the ashes of the civil rights movement. Jesse, of course, being a contemporary and having been with Martin at the time of his death, and Al Sharpton, of course, being the boy preacher who briefly met Reverend King before his death. So that's kind of the backdrop behind that question. Have we seen, and just in your opinion, because I'm curious to know someone from your generation who actually saw these people who we only get to talk about in our discussions in history books.
Again, very, very personally, the people that you mentioned don't live up to the people that I came up with. The Whitney Youngs, the James Farmers, the Roy Wilkins, the Martin Kings, the Malcom X.
Right.
Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton don't do it for me like the ones that I grew up with.
Right. Kind of getting off the subject real quick. I know that you and I had this conversation before. I want to ask you a question about Malcolm X. What was the general feeling from, I guess, your contemporaries about Malcolm? Because my studies have told me that prior to the Kennedy assassination, for the most part, Malcolm was viewed as someone who had hate speech. A white man is the devil.
I think a lot of us just didn't understand Malcolm, and I was probably one of them. I didn't appreciate where he was coming from.
Right. Is that something that with time, it's been 48 years since he was killed?
Now. Time has taught me, that Malcolm wasn't a violent man. He was a man, right, with a capital M.
Right.
He wasn't violent. And I think back then, because I was standing him next to Martin Luther King, and Malcolm's rhetoric to me was harsh.
Right.
But I've come to understand it a little bit better.
Would you say that your opinion of Malcolm was consistent with what many people in your general age group, as well as your, I guess for lack of a better term, better demographic, where you grew up, your friends? Is that generally what we thought about Malcolm at the time?
Malcolm just wasn't in our horizon. He just wasn't somebody. It was about the other civil rights leaders.
Right.
With us.
Right. Now, we know that with Malcolm's death, a lot of his rhetoric got spun into the next generation of kids, and those kids were the Black Panthers. What did you think about those guys at the time?
At the time, they were, a little bit scary to me.
Right.
The visual of them, with the guns marching into the chamber, right, out there in California.
Right.
It's not where I was coming from.
Right.
That just as a general soul, and I just wasn't into the black movement, right, Black Power movement. You should
see, by the way, the looks on all our faces, and we're all fascinated by the history that we're getting here, and I'm hoping that the folks in social media are agreeing. I'm going to kind of wrap it up and bring it to a close here in just a moment. But another question that I wanted to ask, kind of getting back to Kennedy, when we look around the latter stages of 1963 and the early part of 64, in the immediate aftermath of his death, what do you say about how the country, not just black people, because we felt, like the guy who was going to be a champion for us had been taken, but generally, what was the country like? I mean, was it all of the country coming together, or was it mostly just our community?
Well, the country was just stunned, and it was a process that we all had to start going through. It was sad, and we were stunned. And we were missing him. We saw this thing play out. I mean, I watched, the thing, Jack Ruby, shooting Oswald.
It's funny that you bring that up because that was actually my next question.
I watched it live.
That was my next question. Why don't you, for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with that, why don't you tell us about who Jack Ruby was and what he did?
Well, he's the person who walked into the, I guess it was a garage where they were taking the assassin of the president. They were moving him from one place to another, and this Jack Ruby just was able to walk a little past everybody, pull out a gun, and shoot him on live television.
Yeah,
it was unreal.
It's crazy when you think about that. As crazy as it is to think about the president getting shot and killed, it's just as crazy as thinking that someone can get close enough to a person in police custody and kill them right there in front of everybody.
As we all watched. I watched it happen.
Yeah, on live television.
Yeah, definitely.
Live television.
Yeah. Well, the ladies here in the room are suggesting conspiracy. That's one thing that we hadn't really talked about. Any thoughts on the various conspiracy theories behind, Ruby and Oswald and the Kennedy assassination? Any thoughts on it?
I'm not, Marcus, we've had this conversation. I'm not the conspiracy, that's not me. I believe that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone and killed the president. I think that, Jack Ruby lost his mind over the thought of that and went in there and shot Oswald. Right. I'm not one who believes in any of these conspiracy theories.
I guess at this point it doesn't really matter, but let me ask you one final question. I'll end on this final question. This Friday marks 50 years since all this stuff happened, and a lot of you guys are still here. Thankfully, to be able to build with us, younger generation, kind of tell us what it was like to see and go through it. But why do we still care? You know what I mean? And I don't say that in a disrespectful way, but I do say it in a very curious way. Like, why is it something where we're still watching documentaries and still coming on, and Kennedy is still pulling ratings on television? Why is it still relevant 50 years later?
They were just such fascinating people. We loved those people. It was I guess it was the end of an era, in our country. They called it Camelot, and we were happy.
Right.
We were happy people.
Right.
And that era ended, and it's been bumpy ever since.
SY actually has a question for you. Go ahead, SY.
Hi.
Hi there.
Just a quick question. It's kind of cliche, but from the 60s till now, in your opinion, what would be the greatest change that you could see our government make?
The greatest change?
Yes. From the difference between now and in the 60s.
Oh. The greatest change. Well, it's just, it's a much more dangerous world, that we're living in, and they have us being so much more careful about everything.
Do you think that the way that they're surveilling us now is on par with?
They do. Like with back to Jack Ruby for a minute. I mean, he was able to walk past, all of that law enforcement and take out Oswald. Right. And now, we're observed in bathrooms in malls.
Right.
We're watched everywhere, everything that we do. Where you're under surveillance.
Right. Right.
You can't walk outside the building that you're in right now. There's cameras everywhere that's going to catch everything that you're doing.
Right. Right.
It has just taken something away from you, taken away from all of us.
Right. And that's equal parts scary, but you and I have had this debate. We've certainly and we've had this as a heated debate with the merits of actually doing that. On one hand, the surveillance will keep us safe, but the trade off is personal freedoms and things of that sort.
Freedom, right?
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah, and you have some folks that say that they would trade their personal freedom for safety. So, but that's a conversation for another day. Ain't no how stepping with Marcus J. I want to personally thank you, Mom, for joining us and sharing that great information. That's the kind of stuff that you can
it's
only.
my pleasure.
Yeah, that's the kind of.
And I'm looking forward to coming down into the den and giving everybody a great big hug.
Absolutely. That's the kind of stuff that you can only get from somebody. That's the kind of stuff that you can only get from somebody who was actually there. So definitely from the crew. That's why Brandy, comedian us, Lissa P, all the folks listening to us, social media, as well as yours truly, your baby boy. I want to say thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure.
You
Good night, everybody.
You got it.
Good night.
Thanks, Ma. That was fun. I'm glad we happily had a chance to do that. Yeah, would you say that's why?
I want to hold more conversation with your mom.
Yeah, man, it's cool, man. It's just that's the kind of stuff that we, they say dinner table conversation, which is kind of corny to say it like that, but
you were right.
the truth is,
That's definitely where you get it from.
Well, I was expecting her to believe in some of the conspiracies myself.
Yeah.
Well,
but,
no, you're not going. You're not going to get that.
For him to walk through like that,
No, you definitely not gonna get that.
Pay him a little something.
And it's cool because another time we may need to get Pops on the line because he can tell some stuff. I didn't really get into a lot of the Jim Crow stuff because she would have been a little bit young and she didn't spend time down south
here, yeah.
like he did. But my dad actually had family in Georgia, and so he would go down there in the summers, and he remembers the black and white, the black and white what you call water fountains and stuff like that, and he would have been within a few years of age as Emmett Till. And so, he can relate to what it was like for Emmett Till to just be a kid from Chicago to go visit his family down south. So thankfully, nothing ever happened to Pops, but he can relate to that kind of thought.
But I was unrelated. They're reopening the case. Was it Emmett Till's case that they're reopening a case of a black boy that evidently they claim did something to. I can't remember which child it is, but I've seen his picture. I can't think of his name right now. But they're reopening the case because they want to go after somebody for killing him. So I just.
Was it a case from the 40s, 50s, something like that?
Yeah, back in that era, one of those from the South. I'll look it up.
No, I had to look it up. I hadn't heard it. Ain't no how stepping with Marcus J. All right, couple real quick things I want to kind of stick to while we're kind of on this type of subject. One thing, that's why I want you in on first, is the president with regards to some credibility issues that he's having lately with the launch of the Affordable Care Act, known by the opponents as Obamacare. He's made some promises that he's now apologizing for having not come to fruition, and his credibility is definitely taking a hit. He said people wasn't going to lose their insurances. People have lost their insurances. He said people's insurances wasn't going to go up. People's insurances have gone up. And then you've got more people who are able to register for guns than they are able to get insurance. And I saw a stat that said more people in the time that the Affordable Care Act has been enacted and the website has been up, the amount of gun registrations has outnumbered the people who have gotten insurances by like 300%. Wow. And so, which is bad. You also had people who have come out and said that the administration was aware that this was going to happen. People that were part of the launch that said that they were telling the administration as long ago as a year ago that they just weren't going to be ready in time. And so the president, his credibility has taken a hit. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about that, since we talked about a president who was assassinated on, pretty much at the top of his popularity, and here it is 50 years later and we're still celebrating him, versus our black president, the first black president, who we know rose in the ashes of that tumultuous 60s, who's dealing with some credibility issues. With that set up, what's your thoughts?
It's too bad, because we, for one reason or another, look for him to do what he said and just kind of supersede what he said he could do, so to speak. It's going to be an I told you so. It's going to, between now and the time that we vote for president again, with this happening, he's going to hit some serious rocks. They're going to really just start throwing things at him. It's going to make him look bad. You know, by the time we get the new president, I mean, Lord knows what condition we're going to be in, the government's going to be in, our safety's going to be in, and you know who it's going to be blamed on.
Right.
You know, and you should expect him to have some pitfalls.
Right.
You know, when they're canvassing for votes, they make promises. He's no different than the next person. They make promises. You know, they want to get in the White House. Maybe some things are just out of his control that he just can't do. You know, I feel bad. Nobody wants to make a promise and then go back to the country and say, sorry, can't do it.
Can't do it. Brandy, what's your thoughts?
Like she said, they were going to look for him to fail at this anyway. So a lot of people are happy to see that this happened. A lot of people are sad. I really wanted this to work because it works in other countries. I mean, why can't it work here? And so people were so adamant against the affordable health care bill, which they term Obamacare. Some people hate Obamacare, but they love the affordable health care, and it's a shame.
And it's the same thing. You know, it's crazy. Rush Limbaugh actually said at the time of the president's election that, quote, I hope he fails. This is a man who, you know, lives in a country that makes him the highest paid, most popular talk show host in the country. You would think that he would be happy about the president of the United States election and the fact that we may get some change. And, you know, you got somebody saying that you hope he fails. And so that is kind of, you know, crazy to me that somebody would actually say that. With that backdrop, that same guy, Rush Limbaugh, recently said, who attacked Oprah Winfrey for saying that the president, the recent comments about the president are about race. Oprah was recently asked if Obama faces racism. She said that she, quote, believes there's a level of disrespect for the office that occurs, and that it occurs some cases and maybe even many cases because he's African American. She cited when Republican congressmen shouted, "You're a liar," at Obama during a 2009 speech as an example. Quote, Rush Limbaugh, this is his quote in response to all of that. Then how the hell did you become who you are? Why hasn't anyone in your audience ever said you lie? Because you have. He then said that people are ignorant if they believe critics who say the president is lying are racist. My God, Obama was lying. So he's basically attacking her. He continued, but if a black man in this country are so mistreated and so disrespected, how in the name of Sam Hill did you happen? If there's a level of disrespect simply because he's black, then how, Oprah, have you managed to become the at one time most popular and certainly wealthiest television personality? And so, Brandon, let me get your comment on the fact that Oprah Winfrey says that people attack Rush Limbaugh, people attack the president because he's black. And his response is, how did you happen? This sounds to me like someone who's so completely out of touch that, you know, he just doesn't know what to say. Now, I have taken some criticism from people who have said, why dignify Rush Limbaugh by even bringing him up? But I want people to understand that there is a large section of our population who agrees with him.
That's what I was going to say. He has made a living off of being the extraordinary bigot, and there are extraordinary bigots out there. There are people. He's made money from being ignorant and doing ignorant things, and there are people out there that want to be like him and follow what he does and are like him. That's why he gets the ratings. That's why he's allowed to do these things. And I try not to give any energy to him at all. I don't watch any of his shows. I really don't pay attention to what he says. So I really can't speak on that anymore. But he's going to do what he's going to do as long as he can get the attention. And to attack Oprah, I mean, really, that's like close to insulting God in some arenas.
You know, that's Devil Marcus J. We're getting a call on the live line from Mr. LP Steven Sykes of Alive and Radio. Steven, what's up, my man?
Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Doing great. Let me get the volume better. I think we got you better now. Go ahead.
All right, so, regarding the website, in effort of full disclosure, I've worked in many different areas of the government sites, including the Pentagon, Security Exchange, what have you. The reason why the website has failed is because of a lack of pre-prepping for the launch and everything else. Now, I realize that when you have things go live, there are going to be some glitches. But when the website crashes just for like 500 people just reviewing, it makes no sense. We do have the technology today when if you can just run maybe a couple of million people looking at Facebook, Twitter, or any other things, including gaming sites, just off a couple of servers, and it crashes because they just use a few computers thinking they can maintain what have you, that's the problem. Now, those who may or may not know, the government's always behind in terms of the technology, in terms of the equipment, like 3 to 4 years behind. That's why we're getting our butt kicked so badly with cybersecurity and what have you. And now, unfortunately, with this website, I'm not about complaining on if you have the website, have healthcare or not. It's an issue of poor planning and using old, outdated equipment. I've seen it. I know where it's coming from, and that's what's caused the problem. And he was not involved, let's say, directly, but being an overseer of this, and so the syllabus, there needs to be more of a change, and that's what's happening with the website, and that's why we're seeing the changes and the issues that we're having today.
We're getting a hit in social media, Steve, and I want you to directly respond to this. Melinda is saying that when forces behind and in front of you want you to fail, all reports that they put out about you will make it look like your own actions and not their non-cooperation caused the failure. To that, you say what?
I would say that in some respects, yes, but in some things as well, that if you know that's your job, when you know that you may not have, let's say, full knowledge of something, you have to put in place the proper people. If you can tell me some kids can run gaming systems and network and have it running and operational and have a couple of million, but then you can't have a couple of thousand run off of your website just to review and it crashes on something as much publicity as that, that's one thing you just can't mess up on. You just have to have it on point. I prefer when the information was there, was called on it, about it, and in terms of reviews and several other specialists, it's a problem. Why not have some of the specialists of all these other major websites? Now they're using them, but you should have had people from Facebook, Google, gaming networks, what have you, to deal with overflow and network, and that's what happened.
I can dig it. Ain't no half stepper with Marcus J. I want to move on from this. I got one more thing that I want to get into in this segment, and then we're going to close out the show. But Stephen, stay with me because I want your comment first, and then I'll get the ladies on it. This is about the Toronto mayor who he crackhead, basically. Toronto Mayor Rob Ford, he says he would have admitted to smoking crack long before his eventual admission. It's just that no one ever asked him the right question. Now, for those folks who don't know, earlier this month, some reports have surfaced out of the city of Toronto in Canada of their mayor, Rob Ford, who has admitted that he indeed smoked crack during a drunken stupor about a year ago. There was a drug investigation that led to charges against him and a friend who's also an occasional driver, and that of course led to the thing coming out about him. He defended his earlier denials, saying that he never lied to reporters who asked about his drug use. Quote, if someone would have said and come to me and said, have you ever smoked crack? Have you ever smoked weed? I would have said, yeah, I have. But when you come and you accuse me of being a crack addict and say, do you smoke crack? No, I don't. Have I? Yeah. Okay. Have a drink? Have I acted like an idiot when I drank? Yeah, I did. He continues to say that he's not a drug addict. And he said his conduct was, quote, absolutely wrong, but added, I am moving on. There's also been video of him going on a just bizarre berserk rampage, cussing and fussing and acting a damn fool, basically. And he was recently stripped of his powers as the mayor of Toronto. So, Stephen, let me just get your comment on the crackhead mayor of Toronto. I don't care what he say, he crackhead. You smoke crack once, you're a crackhead. It's just that it's not like other drugs. You know, you're a weed head because you smoke weed once in college and didn't inhale, maybe not. But all you got to do is smoke crack one time, and to me, you're a crackhead. That's just my opinion. But Steven, let me get yours. What you think, man?
I'd rather he just came out and just said, look, I did it and moved on. He's too much of trying to play semantics, and he's trying too hard to look upstanding. But this is where people need to caution themselves that if you do not know how to speak and know how to address something, this is why you hire a PR firm. You would have still had his job and kept it moving. When you try to speak out of turn and just don't know what to say or do, and you think you're handling things and you just want to do things your own way, come hell or high water, this is what happens.
Let me get this one more comment in. I want you to comment on this comment, then I'm going to let you go for real. He was speaking at a weekend toy drive in the Blue Collar City Council district that his brother Doug now represents, and Ford said that he was, quote, sick and tired of all the allegations and all this BS, but he actually says the word BS. Quote, and then he says another quote, sorry kids, I shouldn't have sworn in front of the kids. Because, you know, remember, he's at a toy drive for kids when he says what he says. Sorry, I shouldn't have sworn in front of kids, but after a while, I know what I'm doing is right. I'm serving people. I'm saving taxpayers' money. And you know what? I made mistakes. I drank too much. I smoked some crack sometimes. What can I say? I made a mistake. I'm human. Ladies, I'm going to get y'all comments in a minute. I want, Steven, real quick, give me your final comment on what I just read to you, and then I'm going to let you go.
I think it's hilarious that this man is still in public. He should have gone in hiding and just stay away and then come back out slowly versus still trying to put yourself in the limelight where right now his focus should be damage control and just stay away, not still trying to defend himself.
Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Steven, why don't you tell the Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J listeners about your show, your co-hosts, and where they can find you and what you got on tap for tomorrow night.
Yes, sir. First off, I thank everybody for coming in and listening to Ain't No Half Stepping with Marcus J and the rest of our shows. Tomorrow we're going to have a great topic regarding immigration, just speaking about the process, the various thoughts, history, and a whole bunch of different things. We have a very popular law firm coming in to talk about it, and some other people from other countries to join in have a good panel discussion regarding it. So everybody's going to have a lot of fun, not just with me, but also Mr. Sincere and also our new co-host, Ms. Brandy Richardson. They're there to help keep us in line, help keep me in line, and have a lot of fun. And ladies, I try to answer. You know, you want a lady on a panel? Now we have it. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please hit us up on our Facebook Live and Radio page or email us at liveandradio@gmail.com. And Ms. Brandy will be sure to get those questions answered coming from a different perspective, not just us guys. So we're looking forward to having you joining us.
You got it. Ain't no half step with Marcus J. Brandy, did you have a question?
Yes, we welcome Miss Brandy, but that is a different Miss Brandy that comes on. So I'm formally changing my name right here now. I'm blessed. We'll be blessed. Okay, all right.
you know what, that got past me until just now. I'm sorry. But we got Brandy with an I that's with us here tonight, and Steven.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I apologize.
And no, that's not your fault, Steven. And then Brandy with a Y, two different Brandys. That's part of the family here, Legacy Internet Radio. So, but Brandy with an I had to go ahead and clarify. And of course, she wants us to call her blessed. She's blessed. All right, Steven. Good to talk to you, my brother. Talk to you soon, man.
Good, thank you, and thank you all for taking the time to listen. I greatly appreciate it.
You got it, bro. Take it easy. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. That's why we talked a little bit about the crackhead mayor up in Toronto. Some folks want to just say he smoked a little crack. I say if you smoke a little crack, you a crackhead. There's no such thing as a little crack. You know, crack is crack. There is no coming back from smoking crack. That's just my opinion, but I want to hear yours.
I miss some of the talk, you know, when you started about him.
You ain't miss nothing.
A little crack.
You heard it all.
I'm slightly pregnant, you know, no big deal. You know, just little things, you know, nothing I can't get past. But I want to know why the crackhead was at a toy event. Was that a charity for kids?
He's the mayor of the town. That's why he was there. He just happens to be a crackhead.
Christ, he's a crackhead. Why would you set him up with kids?
I'm going to tell you something, right? Here's the thing. play devil. Matter of fact, nope. I want Brandy's opinion before I play devil's advocate. Brandy, what do you think about the crackhead May in Toronto?
Well, like I said, like you said, there is no such thing as a little crack. You could be a little bit of a weed head for a little while and give it a but crack that
he's a crackhead.
No,
Right,
not even cocaine, just crack.
It's crackhead.
Who does crack?
Now, what?
The mayor.
I have my opinion, which I'm gonna share in a minute. But what makes crack different than cocaine and weed and what makes it different?
What makes crack different?
Yeah.
There's a whole different. I think they cook it differently. Cocaine is pure crack.
Well, I know the I don't know biology.
and it's the poor man's drug, supposedly.
That's what I was looking for. The social stigmatism that goes with smoking crack. Is that what I was looking for? So is that the reason why it's different?
To me, it is. I mean, now I can understand if accidentally somebody put some crack in his weed, and from there, that's how he got hooked or whatever. But yeah, for me to just go out and say I want to try some crack, that's I can't.
So
see it.
with weed being the gateway drug, and we're giving a history lesson, a social lesson here. With weed being a gateway drug, I guess that's the gateway to like cocaine and popping mollies and stuff like that.
But I can't see that. I mean, there's just a point where you.
There's a cutoff.
No.
There's got to be a cutoff.
Hey, look,
like,
man. This ain't no half step on Marcus J. And the one
know.
thing that we don't do is half step. So if you don't want to share, that's fine. But I'll just say that I don't smoke weed, but I have, and I don't. I'm not. It's not something that I'm. If it's damn it, the president used to smoke weed. Bill Clinton used to smoke weed. So I mean, we not talking about. I mean, to be honest with you. If we was talking 100 years ago, we'd be saying, I don't drink, but I used to drink. And then when, what's the word when they let you drink again?
Prohibition.
Prohibition happened and all of that changed. But let me go back to the point. And damn it, yes, I used to smoke weed. Sorry.
Well, I mean,
for anybody that's offended by it.
That's what I was going to say, too. I can't see that being something to say, you know what, I want to try heroin. I want to try something.
But see, that's where.
But that maybe that's a weaker-minded person.
That's
Who knows?
exactly where I was going. So there's levels of it. You can smoke a joint, and I would venture to say that a large population of our people in our country have smoked pot. Most won't admit it on the radio show, but a large population of people that that you see every day, they smoked a little herb in their lifetime. But when you got other stuff like heroin, like you gotta stick a needle in your arm. Crack. You gotta. It's just a different. It's a Lamar Odom. Mayor Ford type of thing when you smoke crack. But let me ask this question. Let's go back serious for a second. Let's ask this question. Do you think, Brandy? I want you on this first. Do you think that he could be a good mayor after having smoked crack a year ago?
A year ago, no.
This was what he says.
Now,
if we're to take him at his word.
If we were to take him at his word and he did it a year ago, I would still say he would have a fiend for it. He may fall back. And that might be why he acted the way that he did. Maybe he's going through withdrawals now that he done brought it to everybody's attention.
He might have had somebody said the BS in front of the kids.
Well, I was going to say, was Mayor Barry, was he still in office?
That's the whole point of me. I was going there, and that's the reason why I brought it up. So Mayor Barry got caught in a crack house, with prostitutes.
And he was still the mayor.
He was the mayor at the time. He ended up going to jail based on the charges that stemmed from that incident. Went to jail, came out of jail, ran for mayor again, and got reelected. And so are we going to be hypocrites and we're going to throw darts at Mayor Ford when we watched the city of Washington, D.C. reelect a crackhead?
Well, I can't see that Toronto. I went up there to visit. I didn't see anything wrong with it. They may have had crime once last year where there was a shooting. But other than that, it's a very peaceful place. They don't have much garbage in the streets or anything like that. It's a very nice place. I went with my sister, ended up going around town by myself, and I had no issues. So it's a very nice place. That was about 5 or 6 years ago, though. So who knows what's been going on since he's been up there or been the mayor for this amount of time. But nothing negative had been said about Toronto until this came out. Now, D.C. at the time, Mayor Marion Barry was in office. This is a totally different story. So and he's bringing attention to the city other than Drake. and the Toronto Raptors.
Well, the mayor started from the bottom. Now he's here. He started from the bottom. Now the whole crew is here.
This is not good attention, though.
It's not, but
It's not
I
good
mean,
attention. I don't think that they're gonna vote him in.
Well, here's the other thing with regards to the crack. When you mentioned that it was the poor man's drug, it's just, for me, and maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. If you're listening to social media, call us 804-402-2893 or hit me up in social media. But this is the first time in my experience that I've noticed that anybody other than a black person has been attached to crack.
yes.
And so this is why I wanted to bring it up, because I've always gone on record as stating the fact that, the drug laws were changed in the 90s by the great first black president, Bill Clinton, air quotes, which I always thought that was bullshit when people said that. I always hated that. But it was changed, because powder cocaine got you to slap on the wrist in the country club jail, and rock cocaine got you damn near life in prison. And a lot of that had to do with the demographics of the people who had those drugs. No matter what people on the right side will tell you, which they were strong proponents of those bills, and Bill Clinton signed them into law, and that's why they're there now. No matter what them people going to tell you, the real deal was they needed to be able to fill their jails with black people. And how they did it was they attacked the drug laws, and that's how they did it. And that's reality. Only social studies will teach you that. But when you see someone who ain't black, who ain't from the hood, attached to crack, that to me is something that's worth talking about.
Now as you say that, he might get elected.
Back then, no one really talked about it, but white people were using crack just as much as the black people.
Of course they were.
The poor, but you don't hear that. You just hear about the black people that were arrested and put in jail that are still serving now for something 20 years ago, where the cocaine user or whatnot is out and about reliving his life, probably still using. So it's a shame.
Am I tripping to suggest that those laws were changed as a direct shot at the black community? Am I tripping? Because my other question is, if you disagree with that, then someone please tell me how drugs end up in any community. Particularly a black community, because I'm black. I come from the hood, and so that's all I know. How do drugs get there? Do we own any planes? Can we get it? Can we get drugs from, can we, cocaine comes from the coca flower, which is known to be indigenous to South America.
Yeah,
so do we have any planes?
No, we don't. It was brought up here by white people. Whatever happened, it got into somebody's hand, and they decided, they were boiling some oodles and noodles, and it fell into the pot, and it became crack rock. And I don't know what happened.
I don't want to indict white America on this particular one, but what's fact is what's fact, and what's fact is how crack was created. From my understanding, and hey, I could be wrong, but my understanding was, you had people like Freeway Ricky Ross who, fake rapper Rick Ross named himself after. I can't stand that guy. That's why I attack him every chance I get. He's my Chris Brown, and hell no, he don't. And I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing his breasts, by the way. Anyway, he was trying to figure out a way to stretch his cocaine and to make more money. And so he experimented, and when he experimented, he figured out a way to stretch it. He stretched the cocaine by lacing it with baking soda and other stuff and cooking it up, which at the time they called it freebase. Freebase cocaine is the precursor to crack cocaine, which freebase cocaine, if anybody is wondering, that's the stuff that Richard Pryor was on when he doused himself with rum and tried to kill himself. And so, poor people. And so I have no idea where I was going with that, but but I was giving the history. I was giving the history of it, But the truth of the matter is, I just never seen it really attached to any community other than ours before. I guess that's where I was.
So it's a weird situation with him, and for him to be a mayor coming out with that, I don't know. For me to come out in the open with I don't care how bad times are now or how free we feel like we can tell whatever business. That's not something that you tell. I can't see that. Me
and K-Dub used to have this conversation when we were young, because when we were 12 years old, Len Bias died of a cocaine overdose. And basketball player coming out of Maryland, and right after he got drafted, this is in 1986. So I guess I was 11. I turned 12 that year. And we talk about this. It's like, what's the conversation that you have with your friends or yourself the first time you say, you know what, I think I'm gonna smoke me some crack? Like after, like people in our general age group who, not with just seeing it on television or having somebody tell, like we saw Len Bias. Like we watched him play, and we watched him get drafted. He was
Everybody was so proud of him.
He was supposed to, yeah. He was supposed to be the next great Celtic, go play with Larry Bird. He was a contemporary of Michael Jordan, played against him in college. He was great. And he came out 2 days after he got drafted, and he was dead of an overdose. That right there is what did it for a lot of people in our age group. And so my question is, for the rest of y'all, what the hell was going on in the conversation that you had with yourself when you said, you know what, I think I'm gonna try crack?
No, not at all. I can't. Like I said, when you said the gateway drug, I can't see that step to anything else. Drink, smoke, maybe that's it. But like those commercials where they'll have somebody, you smoke weed and then you decide you want to go into a junkyard and run from a dog. Who does that? You all are giving out the wrong information.
I'll be honest with you. In my experience,
it makes you just want to go to sleep or eat.
I ain't never ever seen somebody get high off of marijuana and do anything other than want to chill
or talk.
They'll talk your head off.
I don't know.
Some people high on weed, they'll talk your head off. You know, but that's like, I don't know, the jolly drug. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I've heard stories of people high off of cocaine that wild out and they want to be violent and act crazy and crack and all of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, look, I'm not sitting here endorsing marijuana. That's not what I'm doing.
No, not at all.
That's not what I'm doing. I do think it should be legal. And that's a conversation that we can have another time.
Yeah, because people want to hold on to money. That's.
I mean, you know, for those people who disagree with me, I mean, those are the same people, you know, 100 years ago that didn't want alcohol to be legal. You know, if you figure out a way to legalize marijuana and you tax it, you can end the deficit. The $1 trillion deficit that we have will be gone, because all the closet weed smokers who don't like to tell the world they smoke weed will be able to go to the local 7-Eleven and roll a spliff.
And tax tax the hell out of it. Get all that extra money. So
I don't know. I don't smoke. I never have actually.
You never had walked in and just hit you in your face or nothing.
No, but I was in the company of someone who was, and they were a good 30 feet away from me. I was back, and I was like, covering my face, like, go. Like, what?
I mean, I can't see anybody doing anything other than that whole Molly stuff. Anything nowadays that's new, never try anything new.
I'm not
because that
trying
stuff
even
is
the old
always
stuff.
something is
all
always
Molly
wrong with that
is
stuff.
like the last generation of ecstasy, and all ecstasy was the previous generation's LSD. I mean, all of that stuff. That's all that stuff is the same. Steven Sykes is still listening to us. Appreciate that, brother. He's saying that animated cartoon Black Dynamite addressed the issue of drugs coming into the community. It was funny, but it was also truthful. Black Dynamite and the Boondocks are very good about that kind of stuff. Ain't no how Steppin with Marcus J. We're going to take our final break of the night. I know you all are very sad about that, but when we come back, when we come back, we got our rants and we got our closings, and we're gonna actually get the hell up out of here probably on time tonight. Marcus J, Miss Brandy, SY, the people in social media.